So when I showed this to her, she goes, well, that's too complicated. So the reason why she thinks it's too complicated is because she doesn't think as a behaviorist. She thinks as more of an applied psychologist than a scientific psychologist. Okay, so this is the science of psychology. This right here is the science of psychology. This is what, quote, is real. How come a lot of people don't care about this? How come a lot of people don't care? They don't want to know this. Oh no, not at all. It's not taboo at all. Does this explain human behavior? Yes, perfectly. Except, what? Okay, so what does the B represent? Be good. Now, the behavior is easy to measure because how do you define it? How do you define a person's behavior? Come on. Operationally is the answer. So how do I know? Okay, so how do I know you're late? I really don't care, but it's just happened to be right now. Time. Is time objective and empirical? Yes. Okay, and I'm because I have children, I never ever am upset by somebody coming in late, ever. I always smile and say good morning, and the reason is because I don't know what's going on here. What's here? I don't understand the situation. So the situation is this. How do we sum that up? Well, it's the past, the present, and the future, sadly. What does this represent? What's inside this parentheses? But that's details. I'm going to roll all the way back to the top, to the law of effect, and it says your behavior operates on its environment is the key. Okay? So I'm going to scroll all the way back down to the bottom, and this is your environment. The reason why people don't like behaviorism is because this part is too difficult. Where are most of our human stimuli? Well, all stimuli are in the environment, technically, except what is a part of human environment? The temporal lobe? You can't just point to your head in this class anymore. That's like we're just saying the brain. Well, thanks. What is our environment? It's your perspective. Your environment is your perspective. A lot of our environment, a lot of the stimuli are positive. So, just as a quick example, I love coming to work. My wife hates me for me loving going to work. She's like, you suck. I'm like, I get to go to work today. And like the last day of Sunday after break, she's like just clinging to her pillow in the bed going, no, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. I'm not going back. And I'm like getting ready. Because don't you dare get ready for class. It's like to sneak and get ready for class. Because for me, my job is enjoyable. So it's a reward. My wife's job is extremely rewarding at times, but also extremely punishing. No matter what happens and no matter whether she's in control, as a principal, it's her fault. Because she's the administrator in charge. So one of her playground aides, this is not a real situation, but if one of her playground aides gets mad and smacks a kid because he's being an asshole, it's my wife's fault and my wife can get sued. we have a $1 million lawyer insurance policy that we keep, because if a kid gets attacked on the school bus, if it's one of her students, it's her fault. Does she ride the school bus? No. Does she, if it's a middle school kid that hits the kid, does it matter? No, it's still my wife's fault. And as a result, that's a lot of punishing stimuli. There are some reinforcing stimuli, but the punishing stimuli are greater. But why does she keep doing it? She doesn't, yeah, no, it's not sadomasochism. Sadomasochism is when you enjoy inflicting pain upon yourself or other people. It's because, well, we kind of need to. She makes about 30 grand more a year as a principal than she did as a teacher. Which is not worth it, by the way. If you're ever thinking about taking that step, it's not worth it. But now that she's been a principal for 5 years, humans are like goldfish. Once you start making more money, what happens? You spend more money. And all of a sudden, you try to go backwards and can't do that. So financially, she can't go back to the classroom right now. Last year we tried. We saved extra amount per month to see if she could go back. And I think by April, we're like, yeah, that's not happening. we can't maintain that. Especially because we like to go skiing, we like to go to Hawaii, we like to live doing things that we like to live. We like to buy more T-shirts with colored brains on them. Okay, so as a result, there's a reinforcement that's also. But I'm going to write this down. This is something that we talked about a little bit last time. Intrinsic reinforcement and extrinsic reinforcement. This is cognitive. What would be extrinsic? What would be a reinforcement that's external to yourself? Good morning. Yeah. Money. So I also brought chocolate in for you today. It's a little holiday bowl back there. And I also found some other so people think that because my wife's a teacher, she needs candles and she needs chocolate. So, because teachers need lots and lots of coffee mugs and candles. Apples are good because they're gross, but a candle that stinks, what do you do with it? Regifting is excellent, but then somebody else has a candle that stinks. Exactly. So. My parent always, or my wife and her other colleagues always say is that parents who really care understand what the person wants and needs. People that want to try to get a gift because they respect the person go to Bath and Body Works. Nothing wrong with that. My son and I are fueled on leftover Bath and Body Works soap. We don't care, so we use whatever. Right now it's some peppermint something. It's in bigger than. Okay, sorry. I forget what the name of it is. Anyway, but again, if you're doing something to get a reward, that is extrinsic. What would be an intrinsic reward? Feeling? Oh, fulfilling. Your voice is not again. Oh, okay. I'm going to write this word because it's easier for me to spell than fulfilling. We talked about this before. Joy. Joy. When you do something, yeah. So what about something like cocaine? No, it's not intrinsic because what is giving you the joy? The thing. Without the high is caused by the chemical. If you in the chocolate, it's enjoyable because the chemical gives you that joy. So without the chemical, what do you have? Nothing. Because the chemical provides the happiness. So right now in my wallet, I've got $240. Look at that thick wallet. I never have. I do too. Because it's unbudgeted family money. Oh, yeah. Okay. Of course, I'm harvesting Craigslist for useless crap that I don't need that I can resell at a loss later. Yes. No. I sold my recumbent bicycle yesterday. The one that you sit down and pedal in front of you. Because we went for a long ride on Sunday, and I finished the ride. I'm looking at it going, well, this is such a cool thing, but what didn't it give me? Joy. I'm like, I finished the ride, I was tired, we got exercise, but I'm like, there's no intrinsic joy for it. I have Sketchy, which I've showed you pictures of, an orange mountain bike that is the worst mountain bike ever made. I get happy every time I look at it. I sold it and ended up buying it back because I missed it so much. I made a profit on that one too. That's not important. Sold it for $150. He had it for a year, bought it for $100. He left it outside. Oh well, didn't hurt it at all. Okay, but all of my bicycles that I have right now bring me joy. So even though I don't ride every single one all the time, just looking at them, I feel a sense of satisfaction. That's why I keep them. Has anybody ever seen the tidying show? This little Japanese lady who comes into your house and comes in and like hold this. Do you feel it? The person's like, it's an old t-shirt. She goes, let it go. So my wife and I did this over the break. Is that we went through her closet, went through everything in the garage, and she's looking through all the Christmas ornaments that we've had for millions of years. And she picks it up and goes, I have no idea where this came from. So what do we do? Donate it. We just put it out on Craigslist. Free stuff. I mean, a bunch of really nice stuff we got rid of. And some guy bought it, we'll sell it at swap meet probably. But it's one of those things where if it doesn't bring us joy and happiness, do we really want to keep it around? So there's part of you says, well, I might need it sometime. But we have a little house. We have growing teenagers. We don't have space to keep something we might need sometime. Just let it go. Be free. And the idea is that if you're buying things to get the reward from buying them versus you're buying something that really produces joy. I don't buy a lot of new stuff. I mean, I have almost different water bottles every day because whatever one's nearby. Why do my kids have new water bottles periodically? Spoiled to be rotten. Yeah. So not women, but people. Yeah. But a lot of people will shop when you're sad because what are you looking for? You're searching for joy, but you're getting reinforced, not joy. So what's the joy of eating an M&M? The actual eating of the M&M becomes a conditioned stimulus. I had to go to the store this morning because my son's going to a Golden State Warrior game against the Clippers this evening. And so I needed to go get a birthday card for the kid who's taking him up there. I needed to get him some cash. And I was going to buy a big box. They have a bunch of Christmas M&Ms on sale at Ralph's. Yes. I was going to bring those in, and then I totally forgot. So I just pulled the old candy bowl for you. But when you eat an M&M, that initial crunch is conditioned extrinsic reinforcement. It's classically conditioned. Is there really enough chocolate in an M&M to really cause a chemical change in your brain? No. But it's classically conditioned. What does that mean to be classically conditioned? I'm going to write a CS here. It creates a reinforcement just by association, not by actual value. Yeah. Stimulus. Conditioned stimulus. Yeah, so a CS. So we take something like chocolate. Oops. Stop it. We take something like chocolate. Chocolate itself, it has real reinforcing values. It has chemicals in it that release dopamine. It's got a little bit of caffeine in it. If you make it properly, it stays in your mouth a long time. It's a very good chemical. But the M&M has very little actual chocolate in it. Everybody should try this at least once in their life. Take baking chocolate, the baking powder, pour just a tablespoon in a cup and pour boiling water over it and stir it up a lot and let it sit for about 2 or 3 minutes like you're making tea. Okay? Then bring it up to your face and take a big breath of the chocolate vapors coming off the top of it. That's what chocolate should taste like. When you take a sip, it tastes awful. Because the taste doesn't match the smell coming off the cup. But once you get used to sipping on it, what does it taste like? It's really good for you. According to a professor at, he's like 70-something, he's a professor at Southwestern, he's from Zimbabwe, and he goes, it's like Viagra. And all the people next to him go, because it doesn't really cause things, but what it causes is blood vessel dilation. Pure cocoa dilates blood vessels. Is that good for you? Yeah, so if you have a stuffy nose, what would just hot chocolate without actual sugar in it or fat in it, what would it do? It opens up your airways. That's why when you smell it, your forehead gets this wonderful sense of yummy chocolate smell. You should try it. And it's, if you also take a teaspoon of it and put it on top of your coffee grounds when you brew coffee, it's really a nice smell effect. You don't really taste the difference, but boy, you can smell it when you brew that coffee. Try it. So, but the chocolate itself is what is the unconditioned stimulus. What if you don't like chocolate? I'm going to write this word up here. It's called latent inhibition. Latent inhibition means baggage. Baggage is a colloquial term. What do I mean by baggage? And so if he doesn't like chocolate, if he got sick eating chocolate once, he can't smell. A lot of chocolate is the smell. Chocolate smell is very fabulous stuff. Baggage means something from your past that changes learning. Baggage, we like to, there's a lot of old jokes about why you should date stewardesses. And the one reason is they generally don't carry baggage. Come on, let's go. Okay. But, yeah. I know. Just a quart of hand sanitizer and no, it's just a standard winter session. It happens. Okay. Drink tea, drink water. It's fine. Okay. Don't do a 2-day beach volleyball clinic when you're trying to recover from your cold. That's what caused my daughter to sink. By the way, the doctor never diagnosed her with anything and just gave her the antibiotic. So she went yesterday to the doctor again, to a different doctor, and he said, you just have a cold. No, there was nothing written in her chart. He listened to her lungs, it's fine. He looked in her sinuses and smelled, it's fine. Looked in her ears, everything's fine. You have a bad cold. It is, yeah. Yeah, and then what happens if you take antibiotics when you're not supposed to? You can develop tolerance to them. The critters that are crawling around inside you can develop tolerance to them. You can kill all the good critters in your stomach that you really want to keep. There's a really great thing called The World Inside of Me, the book about the biome inside of your intestine. Please, the fecal transplant thing is really weird. Don't read that part. But anyway, okay, sorry. But when you have some sort of thing, this thing called latent inhibition, that means that some sort of stimulus, every single person has a set of conditioned stimuli within themselves that you might not be aware of. Things that happen early in your childhood, can they affect your adult self? Yes. And they affect the way that you think in the future. Your culture causes latent inhibition. The way that you talk to other people, the way that other people around you talk to you, the way that other people look at you, all these things create contingencies, baggage. So when you go to a therapist, one of the things that they do, as I said this before, where'd you go? We were talking about being munched on by a dog. Okay, can I share it with you? Okay, so she's holding her phone, and as she's talking about being bitten by the dog, her knuckles start turning white. Because what was she doing to her poor phone? Wrong! And just as she wasn't outwardly very stressed talking about it, but if you actually pay attention to her whole self, you can really see that it was really causing a lot of physical anxiety. Because is your physical self the same as your mental self? Yes. Well, that's when you ask what stress is, and I did burpees. So when I produce cortisol, stress, doing burpees, it's the same as sitting and taking a test. It's the same as thinking about a bad dog. Okay, and does it really matter what's the cause? Does it have the same effect on your body? So, but this is one of the things, and this is one of the reasons that we have the brain scanner that we plug Charles into, is that if you're extremely stressed, if your brain is super crazy active all the time, can you learn to make it less active? Yes, by making the frickin' cube move. We had 2 monitors, it's actually really cool. When you actually are focusing to get the cube to move, you're quieting down your brain. Your brain waves synchronize in order to move the damn cube. And you can attest, it requires a significant amount of effort. You're like, and you can't physically move because physically moving doesn't change the cube. You have to mentally, but keep this in mind. Your mental behavior is the same as your physical behavior. If you want to change your mind, what do you have to change? What's attitude? You have to change your behavior. If you want to change your mind, you have to change your behavior. Hippie crap. I love it. Okay. So I can't remember, and I'm going to have to look. Are we supposed to do memory? The irony of this. Or are we supposed to do consciousness today? Okay, both. Good. That's what I thought we should do, and so I don't have to look. Thank you. So, I'm going to do one more thing with, so, how do you decide what makes you happy? So, well, but that cocaine's right there. So you have to look at what stimuluses are present in the environment. And so a lot of times, just the act itself is the reward. So some people like to get new things and are reinforced by getting new stuff. My wife loves clothes. She has a ridiculous amount of clothes. And which is, I mean, that's her thing. She doesn't spend a lot of money on, well, she spends a lot of money on everything, but she really likes new clothes, and she's been very good about hunting sales. And she shops at Nordstrom's a lot just because if she wears it once or twice and doesn't like it, what can she do? Bring it back. She had a pair of shoes she wore and they hurt her feet. Bring it back. And you'll end up paying more initially, but it makes up for it with the customer service that they have at Nordstrom. At the same time is that we always buy most of the kids' clothes at the Nordstrom sale. You can save a ton of money if you shop the sales. The same thing at Anthropologie. She loves that store. Those candles smell good. But it's really freaking expensive. But what they do is she has her eye on something and she waits. And as soon as the season starts to change, what happens? It goes on to 40% off. And then after the 40% off, eventually it'll go to 40% off of the 40% off. And she'll get a sweater that she was looking at for like $90 and end up getting it for $20. And they're still making a profit selling it at $20, but that's not important. But at the same time is that she's learning that clothes that she really likes, are those the ones that we still have? Yeah, bless you. Oh, no. Scared it away. She's like this. That's your basal ganglia, by the way. Being activated by a nose nerve. Okay, we're going to get out early today, so don't worry. Okay, so I've got a lot of things to do. Like take the dog to get a bath. Okay, so just the behavior itself becomes the reward. That is where intrinsic comes from. Just the behavior itself. You should choose a career based on the intrinsic reward. Now, does it mean you can always find, well, I like playing video games? Yeah, well, there's like 2 jobs for playing video games, and they're very competitive to get to. One of my former students, Julia, her sister works for Sony in Serrano Valley, and they do the VR headsets and do cognitive tests on the people using the new VR headset stuff they're working out with the PlayStation. And so that's a really cool job. But how many people work as the psychologist in that job? 1. And I'm sure there's some different other gaming systems too, but very, very low probability. So, but if you like playing computer games, what should you learn how to do? Code. Write freaking code. You say bluff, but you're starting out of college at $93,000 a year if you know how to write code well. Especially if you're female, especially if you're a female of color. Because they don't play that game. And so as a result, if you have any sort of female of any sort of ethnic diversity, they're like, come work for us. And we have a bunch of very nerdly white men working for us, and we need diversity. Oh, and Indians, people from India. Honeywell, a heating company, hired 17, they had a big hiring fair up in the Bay Area. A friend of ours, he was an accountant for Honeywell, and she was there interviewing people. They hired 17, 18 young women at a Women for Science who knew how to code to program freaking thermostats. To write the code to run a thermostat so that you can integrate it with the web and make it control your temperature in your house. They had a hiring fair for women. A bunch of women from India flew over to go to this hiring fair to try to get in. And they started at $93,000 a year. But what if you hate that stuff? Is $93,000 a year worth it? Well, for about 4 years it is. Well, no, but I wouldn't do it either. But why do you watch surgery things and sew pigs' legs together? I picture you tripping and falling down. But not really. But he practices suturing on pigs. Don't ask. It's just la 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 la. Dead ones, not live ones. That would be mean. Well, but it's intrinsic. It's intrinsic. It's something that you want to. Well, it's not for me. That'd be very sad for the poor pig, especially if its toenails are painted, named Morris or something. But in this classroom, 2 winters ago, I had a student who had a pet pig, and it's hashtag city pig, if you look for it. They lived downtown, and she had this little potbelly pig that was her hashtag city pig. All right, moving on. So, and it has a ton of things. So, just doing, if something is the reward, if just doing it is the reward, then you found a job or a career. One of my students really wanted to be an educational psychologist, but she just didn't want to go through that much school to be an educational psychologist. And so I'm like, why don't you just go volunteer to work for an ed psych person? Just go, hey, school district person, can I please follow you around? And she looked forward to going to her internship every day. Kind of a no-brainer. Did she find the career that she should follow? Yeah, because she looked forward to going to work every day. That's what you should do. Sadly, sometimes you can't make enough money to live doing what you really want to do. So you have to balance intrinsic versus extrinsic. So if you have a job that you make a lot of money at but you really don't like, what should you make sure that you do? Yeah. Make sure you have a hobby. There's an old guy who lived across the street. Okay, his name was Glenn. Glenn was, I don't know how old this guy was. His son was in his 60s. And this is a long time ago. Glenn lived to be 106, 107. And his thing was bird watching. He loved watching birds. Finally, they sent him to a retirement home because he just couldn't manage his own house anymore. But he would get up, he'd go out, he'd sit and feed the ducks, and then he'd call his son and talk about the ducks for about 6 hours. And why did he live so long? He was happy. He was happy. We went and visited him a couple times. He lived across the street from us for about 10 or 15 years, I think, before he finally moved. He wanted to talk about the new baby ducks that came out, and he gave them all names, and he's all excited and happy, always smiling, always excited. But that's because he had this intrinsic joy. The other guy, Joe, who moved in across the street, was always kind of down. His wife died from Alzheimer's. He took care of her until she passed away. And then he's just sitting there, and he goes, yeah, my son and I picked out the casket. Just waiting. And he'd always complain about everybody in the neighborhood. I think that was his hobby. We love our neighborhood. But again, he was always down. And he didn't make it till, I don't think he made it to 80. It's interesting to look, because does that mean if you find a hobby and something you truly intrinsically enjoy that you'll live forever? No, there's a lot of other variables. Sorry, silence. Okay. So now, what does learning have to do with memory? Okay, I'm going to write the word retain. Okay, I'm going to write the word recall. Anybody else? What are the words for memory? Recognize? Yeah, remember. Good. Forget. Come on. Retain, that's up there. Got that. Remember, forget. Okay, so where did these words come from? Wait, no. They didn't come from your memory. You've never seen this slide before right now. How do you know the number? Yay, memory, hippocampus. Okay, so I know you said that, but I expect you to say that. Okay. But Are these things that are from your memory, or are these things that are from your consciousness? You don't remember me writing these words up here before. You actually came up with something new. It's not a memory, but it's actually something new. So, in order for you to understand memory, you have to understand exactly what your memory is. Our memory is a very fuzzy thing. I was reading this big article about flashbulb memories. Okay, a flashbulb memory is something really serious happens, and while something really serious happens, your brain tends to run in like slow motion. It actually, cortisol causes your, we'll talk about the parts in a couple seconds, but makes all the parts remember everything in super, super detail for a very short period of time. What happens over time? It fades. Okay, and I'm going to write this. I really like that you put forgetting up there, because most people don't think of the other side of memory. Most people think of the front side, the remembering part, not the back side, which is forgetting. Okay, so I'm going to write this other up here. Savings. The first research studies of memory were not about the actual physical memory. In the Connectome video, the guy, he said something just off the cuff. He goes, yes, neuroscience has been looking for that your memories are in the connections of your brain. The connections in the cells. That's where your memories are. The guy by the name of Lashley tested this. Pavlov tested this. In other words, can I find a memory and then cut it out? Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? Can I do that for real? So Lashley trained a rat to go through a maze. Okay? And so there's a little piece of cheese right here, and the rat has to go up, over, and then this way in order to get the cheese. Right? Rats prefer sunflower seeds over cheese, just in case you're training your rats. Sunflower seeds are much more effective. Okay, don't go to salted because they get hypertension. So how do I know the rat remembers? Faster errors. Faster errors. We count the time it takes to go through the maze, and we also measure the number of times it makes a wrong turn. Now, there's only one wrong turn that it can make here. Well, technically more than one, because we used to run a maze like this, and the rats would, sometimes they'd go up, and they'd go this way, and then they go back this way, and then they go this way, and then they go back this way, and this way, and then they stop here, they look confused, they poop, and then they'd go back, and then run this way, and then run that way. And so you're sitting in the dark, because rats prefer being in the dark, and you're sitting there with a stopwatch. Beep. Rat's going, and you're keeping track of, how do we measure faster? Time. But faster, yeah. We measure the change in time over number of trials, right? So we measure the change in time over the number of trials. The first time you put the rat in there, it doesn't even know why it's there. You've explained it to the rat. You're going to go through the maze. You're going to go down, take a left, go right, and then you get a piece of sunflower seed. The rat goes, you put it down and it looks at you. Hi. You can pick me up? Because they're waiting for you to pick them up. And then you don't pick them up. You're sitting there with the stopwatch. It's 2 a.m. You've been at the lab since 7 in the morning. You've had like 67 cups of coffee. You have to pee. And you're sitting here with the stopwatch. It's against protocol. Boink. To poke said rat with pencil to get rat to move. And because the pencil is used to count the number of errors on a little piece of paper. Not to poke the rat. And there's actually a sign at the top of the paper saying, do not encourage the rat. Okay. You can do it, buddy. You can do it. Okay. So the first time through the maze, the time is slow. But if the rat does remember, or if the rat is learning, what do we say? What happens with the time? It gets less. So we look at this as a function. It looks like this. So time is on this side, and speed is on this side. I'm getting rid of the word time because time and speed are very similar to each other. Trials, number of trials that you do. Every time we put them in the rat, it's a trial. So we can count the number, first trial, second trial, third trial, fourth trial. Most rats, believe it or not, after one trial, they're very good at navigating spaces. That's why if you have a rat in your house, you can, once you figure out where it's sleeping, it'll come back there the next night. Yeah. So speed, oh, the other way, you're right, sorry. I was thinking, you're right, my bad. So speed, I was thinking time. Yeah, time, so, no, because, yeah, time, it goes that way, okay, so. But we measured time, so I was just thinking of the graph. Thank you. Distance over time changes the way you're looking at it. So, thank you guys. Okay, so this will be time in seconds, and the first time it took a long time, and subsequent rats got faster. We work with rats with what we call fetal alcohol syndrome, rats that have been exposed to alcohol while their baby brains were growing. And it's not nice to get the moms drunk, but I forget the ratios, but we get their blood alcohol levels up to, I can't even remember the numbers now. No, we get their blood alcohol content. There's milligrams per deciliter units. I think it's 300 milligrams per deciliter is considered. I forget what the I looked at the chemistry guy. I can't remember exactly what the dosage we used to do, but we had it all weighed out. And so you basically use what's called a gavage tube. In the gavage tube, we made basically White Russians for them. It's a pure ethyl alcohol mixed with an Ensure beverage, like one of those old people drinks with protein in it. Because if you inject pure alcohol into them, it'll kill them. And so you have to put in a proteiny medium so that it absorbs slowly and doesn't hurt them. Now they use a vaporization chamber where they just put them in there and they infuse the alcohol in the vape, and then rats breathe it in, and we can measure their blood alcohol concentration by the density in the chamber. No, because we don't get them hammered, we just get them tipsy. Yeah, so we get them not anesthetized drunk, because most people don't drink to anesthetized drunk. We're modeling human use. Anyway, so there's different doses, and we measure. You poke their tail and get the blood, and you can measure the blood alcohol concentration. It's not nice in the rat lab. What's funny to me, or funny or sad, is that the fetal alcohol rats do this. Whatever way they go first, they keep going the same way. So whatever way they learn to turn first, they continue exactly the same. They don't get better. They don't learn as much. So as a result, once they get a little bit faster after the first trial, but then after that, they go the same speed. Rats that learn start, you can actually watch them kind of go, and then the third step, they're leaning and just around 2 seconds, they're done the beep, beep, and they're out. The fetal alcohol rats, if they made a wrong turn first, they keep making the same wrong turn. It's called perseverative behavior. In other words, is it that they don't remember? Well, they do. That's why we pulled their brains out with the whole oral stories earlier in the semester. But we look at their brains, and in fact, depending on when the alcohol is administered, you can make very specific deficits in the rat's brain. If anybody's read Aldous Huxley, A Brave New World, when you're trying to train people, to work in the sewers, we add alcohol to their vials so that they don't care that they're working in the sewers. So at certain gestational period, in our test tube babies, we add alcohol and lower the oxygen capability, and their brains don't grow as much, and as a result, they're big, lumbering, strong people who work in the sewers. Epsilon. That book was written in the 1920s. Moving on. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Take English. Okay. It's a really good book. You should all read it. And 1984, and A Clockwork Orange, because they're all now. They're all about the world now. Right now. Moving on. Okay. So, what happens to the number of errors over trials? Looks exactly the same as the speed. Speed is a function of error. Okay? So what if I take a break? We were on a break. What happens? Well, that's what we test. We test retention over time. So how do I test retention over time? We take a break. We take a week off. No running the maze for a week. What do you notice? What do you think the rats will do? Well, okay, so we'll get to the chickens in a second. They do this. They learn faster the second time. They still have the learning curve. They still have a learning curve, but the second time that they learn, it's faster. What if we take another break? What happens? It's even faster. And it's hard for me to draw it faster, but you'd have to see real data. But every time you learn something, you learn it faster. So is it memory, or are you just relearning it again? Well, that's why this guy named Hermann Ebbinghaus called it, it's not memory, it's called savings. You remember things according to Ebbinghaus so that you save time learning it in the future. Think about cognitive learning. If, I had to replace the gasket on our washing machine. We had a front-loading washing machine, and the gasket on the front was a bobby pin, hair things, ladies and some guys, got stuck in there, and so as it just sat in there forever. You're supposed to clean out the buffer every time. Who does that? Anyway, so that's the reason why you clean out that ring around your thing, so that it. Anyway, the bobby pin poked a hole in it and started leaking. So I went on YouTube and I said, how to, fix it guys wanted $300 to fix the damn thing. I'm like, screw that. So I bought the gasket for $80 and I got on YouTube and it showed you how to take it apart and put it back together. I'm like, good. Why watch it first? If I tried trial and error to figure that out, that would have taken me a significant amount of time. But if I watched the steps ahead of time, not memory, I will save time when doing the actual behavior, because I won't make all those mistakes because I've already learned the procedure. So that the idea of memory itself as savings is really important. So like the stuff for this class, when you go back and look at that first test again, is it easy? Yes. The answers are obvious. Like when we went over it in class, the ones you guys were all arguing about, as soon as we went over it in class, after you spent the time arguing, you're like, oh. Yeah, and I was trying to, yesterday, or the other day we did snatch at the gym, and one of my friend Susan was working out this morning, and she didn't do the workout on Wednesday, so she did the workout we did Wednesday this morning. And so I was showing her how to do the snatch. And she's done it before, but she couldn't remember. Did she learn it really quickly again? Yeah, because she already learned it once, and so in order to learn it again, she'll learn it faster the second time. One of the girls that we work out with, I actually complimented this morning, her kettlebell swings, you take the kettlebell and you do this, they're like perfect. And she's been working out at the gym since the summer, and her kettlebell swings are better than mine. Because she spent a lot of time practicing, and whenever she does them, she goes through the script in her head of how to do them properly. I tend to forget sometimes and I get lazy, but she does them like perfectly every single time. She also happens to be a physical therapist. So why does she do everything correctly? She understands the consequences of not doing things correctly. That's what she does for a job. Okay, anyway. So let's look at how we save when you remember things. Okay, now we can talk about the hippocampus. Now we can talk about the hippocampus. So your hippocampus has layers of cells. I'm going to draw this not to scale. It says organ of memory. The hippocampus is where your memory starts. It's not where your memory is, but it's where your memory starts. If I scoop out your hippocampus, what happens? No, you don't. Well, if I do it, you probably would, but just saying, neurosurgery I've done on rats, but it's not. Sorry, I forgot to turn the recording back on after the video. Okay. So let's go back. You have a sensory experience. I'm looking at the clock. I'm waiting for another 6 or 7 minutes left. Your sensory experience, I'm assessing that stimuli. That stimuli is then going to the cortex, but also going to the amygdala and also going to the hypothalamus. Your prefrontal cortex is putting this into what we call your short-term memory. Whatever you are experiencing, your prefrontal cortex is seeing now, affecting choice. As soon as you look away or think about something else, what happens to that sensory experience? Well, the sensory experience is in the activated neurons. Neurons start firing, sending electrical signals, releasing neurotransmitters. What if I stop activating those cells? Not gone, decreased. So when you stop sending action potentials, stop sending electrical spikes, they fade out. So someone says, "Hey, my name is Johnny," and I'm like, "Cool." I walk away, I look back. He just told me his name. Damn it! And then where does it go? Short term, it goes to your prefrontal cortex. You're like, "Cool, nice to meet you." There's a guy that we work out at the gym with most mornings. I don't know his name, and it's long enough now to be awkward that I can't remember his name. He introduced himself to Susan this morning, and I didn't quite hear it. Damn it. Okay? And the main reason is I haven't really tried to remember his name. How come I can remember most of your names pretty accurately? I tried. And so by trying and cheating by looking through the roster once or twice when you weren't around, what was I trying to do when I saw your name on the roster? I tried to activate the same sensory experience. So with what we try to do is our memory really is reactivating the sensory experience. So that's why Julian and I had Julian and Johnny mixed up, and I couldn't quite get yours down, and I have to remember Aunt Leslie because that's the way I can remember hers. Most of you I have by your face now. I see your face and my brain goes, okay, I got it. But, sorry Leslie, I'm fine now, but when I was handing out the tests, I had to wait till I saw Leslie and then I said, aha! Versus, I can look at Serena or CJ, or not Raphael, the other one. Dang it, it's not there. It is Raphael? Oh, it's not Leonardo then. Okay, Raphael, sorry. So, all right. How come it's not perfect? Because I'm trying? Because my goal is to take it into my hippocampus for long-term memory. And this is why it's really important for me to do this. I have a student, Cecilia, who asked me for a letter of recommendation. Because I knew who she was, as soon as I saw the name on the email, what happened? Immediately her face pulls up. I knew exactly who it was. Who wants my attention? Our cleaning people will be there at 11:30. Isn't that nice? I have to clean the house before our cleaning people get there. Because they don't want to think we're slobs. Oh, the dichotomy. Okay, my wife and I said, we don't need a cleaning person, we try to do it ourselves. So it was terrible. By like Wednesday, the house was dirty again. When Andrea cleans it, ideal. Anyway. No. Different area of the brain. Okay. Nope. Nope. Okay. I've read the 2 chapters in language and cognitive textbooks, so I can definitely say no. Ha. Okay. So, your long-term memory is your hippocampus. Okay? And this is going to be irritating for those people taking notes, but I want to do this because I've been wanting to do this for a couple of years. This is how your hippocampus works. If you're taking notes, sucker. You have fibers that go one way across your hippocampus. You have other fibers that go longitudinally across your hippocampus. So far, so good? What are these things forming? A grid. Okay? I should have lined them up with the lines on the grid, but I didn't. Okay? So we'll take a break here in there's like 3 more minutes. So your hippocampus is made of what we call grid cells. These grid cells are lined up against each other. So if sensory information is coming down one path at the same time as sensory information is coming down another path, they form something called a node. Well, this is really cool. So if in my hippocampus, if information is coming down one neuron at the same time information is coming down another neuron, where those 2 neurons cross, and they are set up like a grid, literally layers laterally opposed to each other. I'm going to give you another hint. The cerebellum is exactly the same. The cerebellum is organized exactly the same because cerebellum is involved with learning and timing. Learning. So your hippocampus is very much like your cerebellum. Cerebellum is involved with timing, like motor skills, like playing with the yo-yo, or writing with a pen, or opening your phone. But your hippocampus, what is it paying attention to? What are these nodes? What are these nodes about? These nodes regenerate sensory experiences. So I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think of the first car that you experienced. Try to think of the first car. If you remember your parents' car or think of your first car, try to think of what that looked like. Think of the first car that you can remember riding in or being in. When I say first car, whatever pops into your head. Like if I said, I don't want to take a picture of a dog because then you'll start clenching your phone again. So I think car. Okay? So what does it look like? So give me some details. Okay, so give me some details.
Red.
Okay, there you go. Red. Dangerous first car.
Yeah.
Right, bring it on. Oh, the worst drivers drive tennis.
No worst drivers.
There's actually science behind that. A lot of young people buy them as first cars, so therefore they're the worst drivers. Not that you were, but okay, okay. But okay, so but when I say first car, what I'm asking you to do is find that node. And what that node will do is that node is connected to who? People. When? Can you think of the first time? Like, I remember that my parents' old it's got to be a 1968 or 1970 Pontiac Le Mans. Sparkly green with green vinyl leather vinylette seats. So when you get in, after going to the lake all day, you sit in the green vinyl. It's like 800 degrees out, and you're like, the seatbelt burning my stomach trying to buckle it. Good time. But why do those memories come back? Because the when and the who and the where are automatically coded in these nodes. Now this is what's really important. It's going to crash. Okay. When I say automatically encoded, these nodes automatically keep track of the sensory experiences. There's parts of your hippocampus that automatically recognize faces. So once you learn someone's face, if you see someone from the front or the side or quartering from the top or your stupid Snapchat corner of the face, do you know who it is? How do you know? It's not that you've seen all the facets activate the same node. And it activates, immediately remembers faces. Humans are very good at this, at remembering faces. There are some people who have a disorder called prosopagnosia. Prosopagnosia is the inability to remember faces. There's something wrong. My daughter's ASL teacher has prosopagnosia. So we had a meeting with her in the morning for my daughter's IEP. Okay, 2 more minutes, 1 more minute. And we had a great conversation with her. We talked to her. We went in after school to talk to her. That night was back to school night. We were talking with her that night. She's wearing the same clothes. We're wearing the same clothes. She introduces herself to us, doesn't remember us. And I'm like, and she goes, I'm sorry, I have a really hard time remembering faces. And so I go, oh, cool, prosopagnosia. She looks at me and goes, you're the only person who knows what that is. And my wife goes, he does that a lot. Anyway, so useless information is what I mastered in. Okay, so, but again, she doesn't record nodes for faces. It takes her 6 months out of the year to know who her students are. They all have name tags because it's not that she can't remember them. She knows all of her students. She knows them all by name. She can't attach the face to them. The same thing as some people are very good at direction. Anybody really good at sense of direction in here? Well, that's great. So some people I'm very good at sense of direction. I can easily, last time we went to Disneyland, I'm like, years ago, and we're driving up to Disneyland, my wife's starting to pull up the map. I'm like, you don't need to pull up the map. You don't need it, it's fine, I get in there. I'll buy random crap on Craigslist periodically. And I got some handlebars from a guy who lived up way behind Granite Hills, up by Crest and back in these corners. And I'm like, I look at it on Google Earth, I got this. And then all I have to do is I get to where it's close, and then I look for the number, because I can't remember the number. How come I can't remember the number of the house, but I can navigate to the house? Yeah. No, because the number of observations is what really, that's why it takes her 6 months. It's number of observations. Like most of us, I did this to poor Lisa when I first started working here. I saw her, I'm like, oh yeah, she was one of my students. Oh, sorry, Lisa. She went to school with me. She was one of my friends in college. But when I saw her, I'm like, oh yeah, she was one of my. I just lumped her in with, because most of the faces that I recognize are students, and I felt so, I did it twice actually over time, and I feel so bad because it's one of those things where you react without consciousness, which generally makes you an asshole. Okay, and so a lot of times this is also the where is when you switch classrooms, I can remember where you were sitting the first day of class. How come I can remember where you were sitting on the first day of class? It's not taking a picture. I form nodes of where things are. And one of my students sat in my class at 8 o'clock and then had to leave and then came back at 11 to kind of finish the class. They had a phone call. And so they were laughing at me because when I was writing on the board, I was writing everything in exactly the same place on the board in both classes. Because how do I remember a lot of the stuff I'm supposed to talk about? Places. But now when? Time. I'm very bad at remembering whens. I don't automatically encode time very well. And so if I have a bunch of meetings that I have to do, why do I have my phone remind me? I live a lot more now than I do in the future and in the past. I'm not good at remembering specific details of specific events of times that happened in the past. So why don't you take a break, take a few minutes, and then when we come back, we're going to label these different parts of a memory and then show you how to improve your memory. It's in the temporal lobe. That's where you hear, so that's kind of where you produce language. Most humans use auditory sounds to produce language. There's some that don't, but majority do. Okay? But procedural are, what is procedural? Process. That's right, remember it. It is a type of long-term memory. Once you learn how to ride a bicycle, what happens the next time you learn to ride a bicycle? I said it purposely that way. You don't remember it, you learn it faster the second time. You learn it. So there's a single track. There's a trail that goes on the mountain right behind the hill here. It goes right across this, and it used to go up. They built a new water tower in the middle of it, so it doesn't go there anymore. But it used to go up around by the cross, up above the church, and then zigzag across the rock faces and come all the way back. A guy by the name of Diamond Dave. I don't know what his real name is, but he's a diamond cutter in job and a professional mountain bike racer in fun. And so Diamond Dave made that track as a training course. He lived right over here, so he would jump on his bike. He was sponsored by a company called Airborne, titanium bicycles, and he would jump on his bike and do laps around this track. We discovered it years ago when I first started working here, so every afternoon after school was done, at 3 o'clock, this is pre-children, my buddies would meet after their jobs at here at 3:30, and we would ride that single track. We do it 5 days a week. What happened with our biking skills riding that trail 5 days a week? Amazingly increased. We could ride down, ride up anything. It's very technical, very slow, but it's a lot of climbing and a lot of technical, a lot of steering. We got really good. Then when we stopped riding on that trail, when they built the damn water tower in front of it, what happened to our riding skills? They decreased. So, but once I start, the reason I have my little child's bike that I hop around on is that if I ride that for an hour or so, my son's fishing or waiting for his basketball practice to be over, if I do that 2 days a week, what happens to my bicycle skills? They get better, a lot better. One of the Tour de France guys, one of the best sprinters in the game, Peter Sagan, he jumps his bicycle, motorcycle over stuff. The reason is because when he's sprinting at 40 miles an hour and there's a curb, he goes and jumps over the curb. Well, the rest of them go into the curb. Most of them are also able to jump over the curb. But the reason he keeps practicing is because when he needs to, he can just demonstrate the behavior almost immediately. And he's the only guy in the stretchy pants hopping on the back wheel during the Tour de France or riding wheelies around. Floyd Landis used to ride wheelies too, but he's slightly nuts and used to ride a truck. Okay. Peter Sagan has not tested positive yet. I used to call it another super. So that's semantic. How do you eventually stop thinking about the vocabulary? How do you turn the semantic things into something that's meaningful? Well, when you start thinking about what those words are. Like as opposed to saying water bottle, it's hydro flask. Why would you use the hydro flask as opposed to water bottle? It's more specific, and then you can say coffee cup, Contigo, whatever you call it. But you can start naming different things. 7-Eleven, buy a cup of coffee, my favorite. Okay, but you can the more details you have, the more names you have for things, the easier it is to recall the semantic information. Is this a pen? Well, it's a pen. It's a lousy pen, but it does work as a stylus, which is a more specific, unique type of pen. But as you gain more vocabulary words, humans have an amazing ability to remember the names of things. It's amazing how we learn the names of things. Because we have this almost limitless semantic bits of information that you can learn. You notice that sometimes, does anybody know somebody who uses thing or whatchamacallit for they for everything? I want you to think about this for a second. My buddy Leo, he has a horrible vocabulary. He never went to college. He hates reading. He is an IT person. He works for AT&T. He's taking his last set of tests so he can go out and work in the field. So he has to know all this engineering stuff. He's super smart, but he knows physics and wiring diagrams. Hates reading. His sister was in a bad car accident. Oh, how's her cognitive functioning? What does that mean? How is she thinking after the... He goes, I don't know how she's thinking. I'm letting him talk for me. She's having some trouble remembering things. How come he doesn't know that's what I'm asking about? There's no vocabulary. And I mean, some of the test questions, and I'll make sure the next little assessment we won't have quite so high level vocabulary on it. Some of you are like, what does this word mean? And so I tend to think, I read a lot, so I tend to think in a lot of very big vocabulary words. How come I don't use a lot of big vocabulary words? My job is to not watch you change diaper again. Did you put it on backwards?
No, she's making sure I go to start with. She's like, you know what, I like it. Don't get the double chocolate chip frappuccino.
Yeah! Thank you. You better, because I've got poo. Okay, so it's actually so as you're trying to decipher semantic and procedural, there's one other type of memory. Episodic. Time. So you remember things in sequence. One of the ways that we automatically encode information is procedurally and episodic. My daughter was having a really hard time with memorization for middle school. She had to remember in 6th grade periods and eras of the kingdoms of Israel or something. And so what we did is we stood in the front of the house and we started with Abraham, I think. I can't remember. And then we went to Abraham and then to Moses and then to David and to Saul and we went through the entire house. Why do we put different names in different parts of the house? She's just like I am, is good with places. By connecting the place, it's called making a memory palace. By reconnecting the place to the bit of semantic information, You can close your eyes and walk through a space. Are you really walking through a space? No. What you're doing is you're walking through nodes. Space, where things are automatically encoded. My son was trying to memorize a speech. He has to give a speech today in class. He's trying to memorize that speech in class today. And he couldn't do it. He goes, I can't do it. Because he's trying to do it last night after their basketball game. So why couldn't he do it? He's in a different space. He's tired. He just finished a basketball game. We found out later he had like 6 cups of tea. They did win. It was like 28-16 at the half, and the other team just jammed back at us. We won 34-30. So it was a really good. Lots of fouls. Lots. Funk. Finally, the ref stopped the game and told the guys, "You got to learn to play basketball because this is embarrassing." Because they were just like, look at into it. I love it. Yeah. Okay, so people always want to find the magic pill or the miracle for increasing memory. And yes, if you eat fish, choline, it increases better memory because the chemical that is involved with this process of forming nodes is called acetylcholine and the chemical called serotonin. But so if you eat turkey, you get more serotonin. You eat fish, you get more choline. But if you eat a normal balanced diet, does your brain make enough of everything? Yes. So the best way to remember things is reduce noise. Reduce noise, yeah. Yeah. So some people have very good episodic memory. There's a video somewhere on my brick hard drive with a gentleman who has a type of autism where he remembers everything, 100%. His name is Kim Peek. And I'm sure if you Google Kim Peek, you can find information on it. But his brain is what's called a synesthetic brain. He processes vision and he processes what he's reading in like 10 areas of his brain, where most of us do. So he has, as opposed to forming one node for everything he reads, he forms like 7 nodes for everything he reads. So is it easy for him to remember things? Yes, it's just like, anybody's seen my keys? Why do I have my keys on one giant orange string? Well, I don't lose them. I do this all the time. And if you have your memories attached to a giant long orange string, it's very easy to find them. If you lose your keys all the time, I say, tie a 30-foot red ribbon onto your keys. And the second you walk in the house, drop the ribbon and just walk until you finally put down your keys. The next time you need your keys, what do you need to look for? Any red ribbon. You grab it, you run it to the end. Okay, then you got it, and you run it to the other end. Just like the rat and the maze. The reason why people lose things, I don't lose things very often because my place memory is very good, is if you have too much noise, like Charles and my brain, because I've seen yours, okay? Noise means a lot of mental activity. If you have a lot of mental activity, it takes a lot of concentration in order to reduce that mental activity. Reduce mental activity increases memory. So if you were able to produce alpha waves, which you were the ones, so the brain waves looks like this, and all of a sudden you go, see that little thing? When your brain produces these little alpha waves where it gets regular, and you were having a hard time producing the alpha waves. I don't produce them very well at all. Some students we plug in, really good generation. Arthur, who was stoned, huge alpha waves. His brain waves look like this. Okay, complicated question. When I say reduce noise, noise are stimuli that you're paying attention to. So in order to answer that question, every single person has a different noise threshold. My wife, when she's working, she can just turn everything out. And her world becomes quiet and she can focus and sit and work. I have to physically shut out the world. When I go into my office, I have the light off. I will put on either classical music or old Grateful Dead. And yeah, well, because I listen to music that I know very well. I don't listen to new music. I love jazz, but I never, when I'm trying to learn stuff, do I listen to jazz. Well, yeah, because I end up whistling along with it. And I'm jamming along. My son goes, "That's really annoying." Sorry. Do I even aware am I doing it? No, but if I'm producing motor behaviors while I'm trying to study, noise. Yeah. But if I'm just I'll listen to the Grateful Dead for hours and not even notice that it's on. And sometimes I do find myself singing along happily, but that's not important. But the idea is when I say reduce noise, I don't mean physical sound. I mean brain activity. Stress is the #1 cause of noise. Because when you have stress, it increases the physiological action potentials. All your action potentials are running faster. So it's hard, because one of the biggest problems is noise causes interference. And I'll get yours in a second. It affects interference. Interference affects attention. And you see I have a very bad attention span. About 3 or 4 seconds. I get distracted by shiny objects, and then... Yes, Ramon, what is it?
Well, kind of like that.
Yeah, and as soon as you do that, the easiest analogy is you're reading a page of a book, and then you turn the page and you start the next page. You're like, what? You turn back and you start going back. Yeah, well, that's because you're behaviorally reading. You're still saying the words, but they're not going into the prefrontal cortex. Because as soon as you shift your attention, what does the prefrontal cortex do? Turns off those neurons that were firing from the sensory information. Now, people that can multitask, by the way, most research on multitasking says humans don't multitask. However, humans can shift attention. This is something that a person like myself with attention deficit has a hard time with. So, when you shift attention, you're paying attention to this, paying attention to this, and then all of a sudden, your kid's asking for Starbucks. Then you come back, and you're right in the same place in lecture, and you know exactly what's going on. That's because what you did is you took this interference and said, click, pause. Did you keep those neurons active still? Yes. Those neurons are still active. And then when you focused on this thing for a minute, then you shifted back, those neurons are reactivated in the same basic space. You lose a little bit. Like when you're driving and texting, we did a series of experiments doing reaction time experiments with people on their phones. Using just physically holding your phone, whether you're talking to it or using it, slows your reaction times down by about 60 or 70 milliseconds. Just having your phone in your hand, having it buzz, that's okay. Okay, but having your phone active, that slows your reaction time down by 60 or 70 milliseconds. Just, even if it's hands-free or anything, it just slows it down. And so, does that matter? Well, if you're on a boring freeway with nothing interesting happening, 60 or 70 milliseconds are nothing. But people, what about in traffic? That's when 60 milliseconds makes the difference. And especially if you're a butt sniffer, no offense, butt sniffers, tailgating, don't tailgate. All accidents are caused by the space between the cars. Okay, this is why self-driving cars are going to really make our world a lot better and significantly less interesting. But if you keep a safe distance between your cars, channeling old man here, that 60 or 70 millisecond buffer allows the cars to move back and forth and traffic flows freely. But if you have a butt sniffer, what happens? Reaction time causes either impact or rapid braking, which causes the next person to rapid brake, and the distances between the cars get closer and closer until the fourth person in line rear ends. You can react fast enough, but 4 people behind you can't because of the increased proportion in lag time. There's a physics of traffic. No, it does exist, but it... Right, self-driving cars would solve that because the biggest problem with... People are upset by self-driving cars running over people. Well, people run over people all the time. Nobody gets upset by it. Self-driving cars have ran over, what, 3 people so far? And all times the 3 people were being stupid, and the guy driving his Tesla with the truck that drove in front of him scraped the top of him off. Tesla just kept going for a couple miles. Tesla doesn't care. Okay, sorry. Now, not going to say... My father-in-law has a Subaru that keeps in the lane and does speed sensitive. Yeah, and what's amazing, he goes, they drove it up to the mountains. He goes, I wasn't tired when I got there. Why wasn't he tired? He didn't have to consciously be focused, so his brain is able to go into this restorative, what's called default state mode, where your brain is able to think creatively, which increases relaxation and creates alpha waves. But when you're producing beta waves all the time, it burns a lot more energy, and you get more fatigue. Moving on. So, it terrifies me, though, personally. But I'm thinking about getting new shocks to the van so it doesn't feel like I'm riding in a boat. Okay, we're stopping. Okay, there we go. Miserable. Poor boy. So this is the thing that we tried with my son last night. I go, Caleb, just read it over 5 or 6 times and go to sleep. That's it. He goes, I won't remember it. You won't remember it now, but when you get up in the morning, I will bet you could recite it with about 80% accuracy. And he's like, no, I won't be able to. Like, just read it 4 times then. Humor me. Because when you repeat something 4 or 5 times, what'll happen? This is what's called a forgetting function. Doesn't that look familiar? The same as the speed running through the rat. It's called a forgetting function. If you remember 20 things, this is the number of things you remember. What happens over time if you only see them once? You forget it. They're called forgetting curves. Some people have lower forgetting curves, some people have very fast forgetting curves. But these forgetting curves are easily remembered by having you memorize a list of words, or having you memorize a bunch of psychology terms, or have you memorize a bunch of numbers. Random, stupid things that people like to remember. But if you rehearse once, just once, the curve changes shape. If you practice it once, the curve slows down. There's some people that say you have to do it 7 times, some people say 12 times. I don't think there is a mathematical formula for making people remember things. But for like when I took German in college, I had a stack of 250 flashcards. German words, okay? And what I did is I had a no stack and a no stack. And what I would do is I would sit down every chapter and I got my new list of words and I would start putting things in this stack or this stack. Aww. Okay? And so every time, this is really important if you're trying to go through flashcards, especially if you're taking biology or anatomy and you have to remember a million words. Okay? So what you do is that, which stack do you go through most often? Go through the stack of the words that you know more often than the stack of the ones that you don't know. Because every time you go through a list of things that you know, what does it do for the ability to learn those? It increases. So take 5. Your short-term memory is between 7 and 10. So take 5, because you can remember 5. Everybody will get 5 right. 5. Do 5. Take those 5, go through them, put them face down, put the definition up, say the word, put the word up, say the definition, back and forth, until you can do either way correctly. And when you can do either way correctly, what do? You put them in this stack. When you get all 5 in this stack, go through this stack. The whole stack. Any ones that you make a mistake on, throw back in the stack. Go back, take 5 more, hit them back in this stack. Take 5 more, hit them back in this stack. If there's like 1 or 2 you just can't get, what do? Write it on your freaking hand. Something. Just put it in microprint on the roof of your glasses. Something. Okay, yeah. So what happens is if you have interference, when we're way back in our little tiny hippocampus back here, we're way back in our hippocampus, if there's interference here, what happens to the memory? Or so memories are very valuable. In other words, I can fake memories. So this is actually kind of fun. If you don't want to spend a lot of money with your kids, what you do is go to Disneyland once, take a bunch of pictures of Disneyland, and then periodically take a picture of your kids. I even want to take a picture of you going to school on the first day and take a picture of them going to school in front of a white wall. Photoshop the white wall out, superimpose it on Disneyland, and what do you get? I remember when I went to Disneyland. And so what we can do, let's see, just really quickly. It should be in here somewhere. That's safe. Oh, there's an ugly dad bod. Sorry about that. Somewhere along here, there's a picture of my daughter in the bay. There she is. Old surfboard, kiddo. I would run. By the way, this is a very dad tired day. You grab the surfboard, you run really hard in shallow water, and you throw it as hard as you can, and they're lying on it, they stand up, and they see how far they can go down the shore. Again! And you're like dying of fatigue, okay, during this whole episode. And so the problem with doing this, well, is she actually surfing? So if I show her pictures, somewhere in my computer in my office, I photoshopped her on a wave. Okay? And so by photoshopping her on a wave, and I thought it would be in these photographs here, but by photoshopping her on a wave, what would she be doing? Surfing. So we start out with a small wave. Hey, remember when we were surfing at the bay? Yeah, because is that a real memory? Yeah, and I go, remember when the boat went by and you caught the wave? And she remembers the photograph, but not the real event. But does it matter? Surfing bay activates images in your occipital lobe. So if we have the brain scanner on and we're watching the occipital lobe, if I tell you to think about an event, it activates the same area of the brain when you think of the event as when you actually experience the event. Except if I add photographs in, what happens? Are you remembering the event or are you remembering the images of the event? The images. I can introduce false memories by photoshopping stuff. When I was a kid growing up, I believe in my mind, I believed that my dad built the house that we were in, and I pictured this old bunch of groups of Amish people pushing a house together. You know, like you ever see the barn raising? That's what my head was saying. Oh, the house was built, and my dad did all the finishing work on the inside. So I found that out later in life. My mom loved ruining my childhood memories. She takes great pride in that. Oh yeah, we never did that. I don't remember that. I remember it, but I remember photographs of, it was like my brother or something, because we looked the same when we were little. And again, so these, like, my dad passed away in 1997, and I'm like, do I remember what he looks like? I remember the last time that I saw him, what he looked like. But he was really sick the last time I saw him, and his hair was all thin, and he was a little skinny with a big distended stomach. Don't die from liver disease, folks. And it's kind of yellow, and it's like, is that how my memory of my dad is growing up? But that's the last memory that I have. So when I picture him, what do I picture? That. And it's interesting, it's like, it's really kind of cool when you all get to a certain age. You kind of creep up on it and don't realize it. And you stand there and go, I remember my parents at my age. Think about that for a second. So when I turned, 34, I remember my parents when my dad was 34. I have conscious memory of him when he was my age, when I was 34. So he died when he was 52. I'm turning 50. He seemed so old back then. But he was also more sick than I was. I still pick up heavy things. But again, false memories, are they real? They're real memories. They're not real. Subjective. Memories are subjective. It's very easy to implant memories into people. Witness testimony is very shaky. If you say, well, I saw it with my own, I saw it with my own two eyes. It's a little robot, not robot, monster thing. So, you don't like kid movies, but I love kid movies. If you see, there's a bunch of really good experiments. One of them by Elizabeth Loftus, where she had the people watched a video crime scene, like a surveillance camera video, where you get a perfectly good look. And I'm going to pick on Alonzo because, sorry. Okay, so one of the guys looks just like Alonzo, okay? And the other guy looks like Cassim. Similar or different? Very different, okay? But then they put the people up in the lineup, and they put Johnny there. They choose Johnny as the guy who was there, not the people that were actually there. Why? This sounds offensive, and I apologize. You're not interesting enough to really stand out. So they would, like, well, I remember his cool mustache. I remember that he's tall. I remember that he's old. But you just kind of are normal. Normal's good, by the way. Because the more average you are, the more people recognize you, which means that you're attractive. Not that I'm kidding. But no, if everybody says, oh, you look so familiar, that means you're attractive. Because the average faces are the ones that most people recognize as being attractive. But they're also ones that are likely to be accused of crimes. Because, not that they're attractive, you don't say, hey, that person's hot, they must have done it. They look like everybody else. So you're more likely to be accused. If you're really weird looking, they're not likely, unless you have like a big eye on the top of your head or something weird. But there's a Bob Dylan song called Hurricane, where they basically, a gentleman was, a bunch of people were shot in the bar, a guy was robbing the bar, and this poor African-American gentleman was leaving the bar because people were shooting everybody, and the police pulled him over and convicted him of the crime. Why did they convict him but not the guy who was robbing the register? He looked guilty. He looked guilty because he was black. That's it. There's no other reason. He looked guilty. And this is the reason why it's scary is because people will say, yeah, I saw that guy in the bar, therefore he must have done it. How does profiling work? How does profiling work? It doesn't, by the way. It targets. No, I'm talking about traffic stop profiling. Well, serial killer profiling kind of works the same way. Very creepy stuff. We'll get there later. If you look suspicious, they're going to pull you over. But black people in our culture look more suspicious than white people. Not. No, but why? I think it's just a kind of a racist legacy from a long time ago in our culture. It's the same thing in other cultures. They also have their pick-on populations as well. Why does that person look suspicious? I don't know. I just noticed that they're up to something. Like in Ferguson, where a lot of the Black Lives Matter stuff really kind of started in really good evidence, was that 80% of the people who were pulled over in Ferguson are black. What percentage of them were doing anything wrong? 10? 10% of the white people were pulled over that were white. What percent of them were doing something wrong? 100%? Because why were they pulled over? They were doing something wrong. And so that's the idea, that when you start looking at noise, your memories aren't necessarily real. You create these nodes based on your experience, based on the observations that you have. But I'm just going to go way back to the beginning because I want to go to a little bit about sleep, and then we'll talk more about sleep on Monday. Let's start back. You have a sensory experience. Your thalamus. Your thalamus activates your amygdala, activates your hypothalamus, as at the same time it's activating the cortex. If I see a person of color and I feel uncomfortable, what message is my prefrontal cortex sending? Fear. Fear. And it might be very unconscious. It might be very subtle. I might not even realize that I'm feeling fear, but my prefrontal cortex says, pay attention to that. The story of Trayvon Martin. Anybody follow the actual details of how that went down? Yeah. He was taking a shortcut through a neighborhood to get from point A to point B. One of the neighbors saw him walking through the neighborhood and said, that boy don't belong in my neighborhood, and followed him. And when Trayvon saw this guy following him, he started to run, so the guy shot him 6 times. Pow, 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 pow. Okay? And he said, well, he was suspicious. Why was he suspicious? Wait, okay. In a neighborhood that, quote, he shouldn't have been in, unquote. But the idea is that in our neighborhood, we have everybody. We are a very multicultural neighborhood. And you see someone walking down the street. A gentleman was going for a trash can last Friday morning. And I talked to him for a while. He's got a new car. He needed money for gas. He spent all his money buying his new car. It's a positive. I talk to everybody. And as I'm talking to him, I'm like, hey, let me go get you, because his bag was full. So I got him another trash bag, and we're trying to get rid of crap from the garage. So I got him a hand truck that we were trying to get rid of. Hey, you want this? And put a trash can on it for him and strapped it down. And he's talking to me, and he goes, yeah, you're so nice. So many people yell at me. I'm like, what do they yell at you for? He goes, well, looking through their stuff. I'm like, recycle. That's what it's for. Most of the junk we dump in the blue cans in the city gets dumped into the trash anyway. It doesn't really get recycled. He's going to recycle it. And he was super friendly. He was super nice and super talky. Why would people assume that person's up to no good? Because they're poor. Oh, poor people that's up to no good. We don't want those people in my neighborhood. What miles per gallon do you get out of your gas? That's confusing. Okay. I can ask her what she gets for her customer. Okay. But what's interesting is that as soon as you start making assumptions, does it change the way you remember a situation? Yes. Changes the way you remember a situation. But by changing the way you remember it, does it change the way you project into the future? This is the key part. What is projecting into the future? Cognitive learning. Okay. So we start going back, we get back to behaviorism again. A lot of your memory is how you affect your cognitive learning. The choices that you make, the language that you use, changes the way that you pay attention to and remember the future and project. Remember the past and project into the future. So as a therapist, what do? They can't dig into your past. We don't have the technology to dig into your past. No, they dig into now. They dig into your thoughts. What are you thinking about now? Not what happened. How are you thinking about what happened now? And that's actually a really important part of this class, is you start to realize that your memories only exist at the time that you have them. The world only exists then. So what happens now? How do you know what's happening right now? Could you become Clive? Yay! He sees his wife. Generally extremely excited every time he sees her. His amygdala goes to his hypothalamus, releases chemicals of excitement. He sees her, he recognizes her. Oh, look who's come. Sadly, with Alzheimer's, which can cause similar behavior, what happens over time? Eventually, the person stops recognizing the people that they care about, and eventually start losing their sense of self. They lose their ability to recognize their own self. And usually around that time, there are other complications that go along with it, and usually they pass away. But one of the old neighbors that we had growing up as a kid had Alzheimer's, and he couldn't button his shirt. He had a really hard time remembering how to button his shirt, and would get so pissed off and mad at everybody because they kept giving him shirts that were broken. And his arms weren't strong enough to pull a shirt over his head, so he ended up wearing like a tunic kind of thing. It was kind of sad. He was still super healthy physically, but mentally he had no concept of anything going on around, and he just kept bubbling anger up all the time. Anyway, very sad. Okay. Yes. Your memory is cognitive. So that's why I say it's not real. Is your behavior real? Yes, because it can change and you can see it. How do I know it can change? You can see it and observe it. You can measure it. But your memory it's not real. It only exists in your cognitive mind. Okay, so that's why we have to get out of our cognitive minds for a second. Talk a little bit about this. We'll talk more about this next time. I just want to introduce it to you. You can make it. Okay, sleep is one of the most important biological drives. Probably in order would be breathing, okay, water, and then sleep. And default ringtone. Hey Google, can you make the Apple ringtone?
According to Apple support, to create custom ringtones using your iPhone or iPad, open the GarageBand app.
Okay, so helping you how to change that. Okay. Yeah, what the hell is an HEIC file? HEIF file? Yeah, my wife got a new MacBook and her phone and decided to start talking to each other, and now all of a sudden there's this new JPEG format that's supposed to be better that Google doesn't recognize. Thanks, Apple. Well, it's not better if it doesn't work. Sorry. Okay. Yes, because I'm IT at the Weinert House, and I had to figure out how to, if you upload them all into Google Photos, from the phone directly to Google Photos, then you can import them into Google Slides because Google Photos automatically converts them to JPEG. So just in case there is a workaround. Moving on. So the idea of sleep is our third most important biological drive. You die pretty much from not drinking water. You die from not breathing. And you can die from not sleeping. And sleep, you die from not sleeping faster than you die from not eating. There's a couple really great videos in my developmental psych where they have a little tiny baby. He's sitting at this table and he's trying to eat a spaghetti noodle, and he's trying to eat it, and he keeps falling asleep. And he's eating. Why is the sleep drive more important than the biological hunger drive? There is a set point for sleep. You have a set point for sleep. Tia right now taking this class is screwing with her set point for sleep. Because right now it is probably 2 o'clock in the morning for you. Okay, she works nights. Yes, the world's a little bit fuzzy around the edges. But so sleep is a homeostatic response, which means it has a set point. You can deal with not much sleep if it's very consistent. Your brain will figure out how to get sleep. Well, if it doesn't, you start getting sick. Sorry. Because you sleep twice every night. You sleep twice every night. Okay, the first half of your night's sleep, or day's sleep, okay, first half of your night's sleep is what we call deep sleep. Well, hopefully. So your deep sleep is your first half of your night. The second half of your night is what we call REM sleep. This is a oversimplification and very simplistic. Take physio and you will get more. But over the course of your night, or your sleeping period, I should say, your body goes down into a state of consciousness that is very low. Then it spikes occasionally. Usually it'll spike in the middle of the night sometime, depending on what time you went to sleep. And then the rest of the night, though, you spend like this. Okay? These are called REM cycles. REM stands for... Yeah. And what rapid eye movement is visual cortex activation. That's when you, well, that's when you most likely do. But that's just, so if I were to zoom in way close, you notice how this one's just a little bit higher than that one? So consciousness, it would be right about here. So sometimes, this is actually kind of fun, sometimes as you are falling asleep, you are conscious, but you're actually asleep. I do this pretty much every night when I'm falling asleep, and it's actually kind of fun, because whatever you're thinking about, your body will all of a sudden twitch and do. Over the course since, what is it, at the beginning of summer, my son challenged me over the summer to try to get abs. I have not, but I'm working on it. And so I've been doing a tremendous amount of core exercises. Lots and lots and lots of sit-ups and lots of back exercises and lots of things to try to get less dad bodish. Which is not going to help because it's my age, not my body, but that's not important. Okay, and so my stomach muscles and my core are very strong now. So if I am falling asleep and I think about like doing sit-ups or doing hikes or doing some sort of activity, what happens? It goes like this, Gah! And it's this like spastic, like full body, like twitch. My ab muscles actually will contract. Because as you are falling asleep, your motor cortex decreases. Your motor cortex loses control. So but do you completely just go blah? I wish. No, not the first half of night's sleep. The first half of night's sleep, you generally will slowly move around most of the first 3 or 4 hours that you're sleeping. But then what happens is, then you go splat. That's when your body goes completely relaxed. Does anybody ever wake up at like 2 in the morning with their arm asleep or your leg asleep? That's because when you're rolling around, you get your arm underneath you, and then all your muscles relax. And what happens to the blood flow to this poor hand? It's done. It's actually literally can get cut off. Not literally physically cut off your body, but just block the blood flow to your hand. Yeah, and then it's all cold. Yeah, like last night, your foot's sticking out, it's all cold. Because during this type of sleep, I'll get there in a second. During this type of sleep, this is when your immune system and digestive system really go to town. So if you get a good amount of deep sleep, you have a healthy immune system. So what if you weren't taking this class at 9 o'clock, you'd be going to sleep, right? So you're not. You're going to sleep 3 or 4 hours after that. So you're going to sleep here. So what are you not getting by taking this class? Your deep sleep. So your digestive system's not getting as good work. We just talked about this right before class started. You'll slowly gain weight because any food that you eat is not digesting as fast. And so your body's like, cool, I'll get as much nutrients out of this piece of meat as I can. And then, but also your immune system gets down and you start getting a cold. Because your immune system needs this deep sleep. But then, the second half of the night, so when you go to sleep, especially after taking a class and you're learning a bunch of stuff, all of a sudden your brain becomes extremely active. And this is mental activity. I like to call it mental sleep. So the first half of your night's sleep is your physical sleep. The second half of your night's sleep is your mental sleep. And I like the fact that we're talking about working out, because if you work out, if you exercise, what do you get more of? Deep sleep. If you physically exercise, you get more deep sleep. And this is why we always make the joke about bodybuilders. The bodybuilders are giant babies. They drink a lot of milk, they play really hard, and then they sleep. And they sleep really soundly. Because if you're trying to get a huge amount of muscle mass as possible, and you're working really, really hard to get as much muscle mass, you spend a huge chunk of your night in that deep sleep, trying to digest and trying to get as much stuff processed as possible. However, if you're studying a lot, and if you're trying to learn a bunch of stuff, if anybody's ever taken a math course over the summer, you go to sleep and all of a sudden you're dreaming about math. It's so sad, yeah. But that's because this part is your mental sleep. And I'm gonna give you the information and not bother with the whole Shaggy Dog story, but this is where logic and connections come from. After this period of mental sleep, after this period of REM sleep, you're much better at connecting things together. Cause, effect, cause, effect. When you don't get good REM sleep, what if you're deprived of REM sleep? What happens? You literally can go crazy. You can't think. You make really strange connections between events in the world. Conspiracy theories and all sorts of crazy things seem to make perfect sense. And the logical connections that you would make become very fuzzy. I remember we stayed up for 3 days once in college just to see if we could stay up for 3 days. Because it's what we do. And on the third night, it was like, trying to stay awake. We were at that giddy point, so we were playing hockey on the fill-in game system of late 90s here, early 90s, I guess. And we were playing hockey, and we were like laughing, and we were doing terrible at the game, and then we went to the grocery store and bought a bunch of kosher food. I'm not Jewish, but we did. But it was like very random. And because just the ability to connect. So if you miss one or two of these, what does your body do? Yes. So if you miss REM sleep, your body does something called REM rebound. In other words, you make it up. You make REM rebound. So you make up the REM sleep. So if you're supposed to get, a normal person should get about 3 hours worth of REM sleep a night. 3 hours. Okay? If you're sleeping for 4 hours a day, you ain't getting your 3 hours of REM sleep. And so what happens is every time you go to sleep, you're going to go faster into REM sleep. Because your body wants REM sleep. Or your body wants, your brain wants. There's a bunch of hormones that are involved called PER and TIM, but we're not going to get there. So REM rebound means that you make up sleep. So what does your brain sacrifice? You lose deep sleep. And it's very unhealthy to lose deep sleep. And you're usually saying this after just, a week, you notice a difference in your health. And that's because when you lose this, your brain is trying to maintain the REM sleep. For mind, REM sleep is the most important. For body, deep sleep is the most important. So what do you need to figure out how to do? How to sleep. You have to learn how to sleep and how much your body needs. So that's why I asked about about the kid in the afternoon, because you still need another 3 hours worth of sleep to work in. The cool thing is, if you are a night person, can you learn to sleep twice, literally twice? Yeah. So you can learn. We had a friend that was he was a Navy guy. He went through the SEAL program, doesn't like the whole Special Forces SEAL kind of thing, so he became he went and diffused underwater bombs as a living. Navy, DOD, EOD. Okay, thank you. I don't know the acronyms. He's badass. But he's like 60-something, and he took Mesa Football College for a workout and killed all of them. He's standing there going, you guys are in trouble. Because his son played for Mesa College. But anybody remember years ago an Air Force pilot was gay and didn't want to face anybody, so he flew his airplane into a mountain in Colorado at Mach 3. This is bad, I don't know what year it was. But he had 2 giant bombs on the side of his airplane, and they bounced a half a mile backwards after hitting the thing and landed in some lake up in Colorado. And so all of a sudden, Greg disappeared for 3 days. And I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Scuba diving in a lake in Colorado. Because there's 2 giant unexploded bombs at the bottom of this lake, and I need to go turn them off." They left them there. They just turned them off. But it's that's kind of scary. Anyway, he has the ability, because of his Special Forces training, he sits down, he takes a couple deep breaths, and immediately he's in deep sleep. A few minutes later, his eyeballs are twitching all over the place. What did he learn to do? Sleep on command. Yeah, it's something you can learn to do, and it's something that takes a lot of time. But the reason is because if he's on, it doesn't matter where he is, what's going on, if it's a safe place, he can sit down and he has this little mental routine that he runs through, and he takes a deep breath, and he has his hands kind of sit in yogi type position, and he just, and then a few minutes later he's almost snoring, that's deep sleep, and then he goes in, his eyes start flipping all over the place. You make a noise or something, and he's alert, he's awake, and he's right there. Yeah. So some people get into what we call super deep sleep. And we were talking about narcolepsy after class the other day. You could actually be suffering from a form of narcolepsy. And so, because normally when your kid's 9, you said? 8. Have they fallen asleep where you've had to literally physically just drag them from point A to point B, put them in the bath, put them in bed, and they don't remember any of it? Okay, perfect. 8-year-olds No, I'm serious. 8-year-olds, when they're growing really fast, they spend so much time in this deep sleep, it's almost impossible to wake them up. As an adult, though, I mean, unless you're extremely sleep deprived, that's very rare, and you could be suffering from a form of narcolepsy. Where narcolepsy is where when you get stressed, you end up falling asleep, and you cannot physically wake them up because of the brain chemistry. But again, it is usually called REM sleep atonia, where the person goes into REM sleep and completely becomes inability to move or think or talk. Okay. It can affect memory, but mostly the biggest effect of narcolepsy, aside from narcolepsy, has lots of different flavors. The one you always see in the movie is that the person's talking and then just falls over. Hold on.